Dun 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 ding 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 ding. That's my proposal for how we're gonna intro our podcast.
Love
We need
it.
a guitar riff. Welcome
Yeah.
everybody. This is the first Stay Sassy podcast. So I'm the Sassy EM. I'm joined here by the Sassy PM. What's up, Sassy PM?
How's it going? It's a
It's
good
going.
morning.
It
Let's
is a
do
good
this.
morning. Nice weather out. So this is our first round of this, and yeah, we're super excited for it. We're gonna go through. We're gonna use this as a place to talk about some of our sassy questions. It's a thing that we have on our website that people can ask questions on. And we like 2 years ago, we were like, oh, you can submit questions and we'll answer them. And we've been pretty delinquent, and a
Yeah, we
bunch of
just
nice.
we just fucking ignored everybody.
Yeah, yeah, classic power move of tell us all of your problems and then we're going to ignore you. So sorry about that, everyone who has submitted questions, but we're going to start using this as a place to actually talk about them. And there's a lot of really good topics, and maybe it's to everyone's benefit because some of these are like you might think, oh, this is my company, but it's been long enough for a year where people are probably past this, so
Yeah.
they can also test our advice against what actually happened.
hmm
So let's talk about this one today. We've got one that we were both looking at and go, this is an interesting one to talk about. So I'm just going to read it off and then talk about what would we do in this situation. So the question is, I work at a startup that is in third place in the market. There's a clear first place market leader. The second place product has strong GTM, but relatively weak product. And we have a strong product, but weaker GTM. We're now starting to see that the brand word of mouth is working against us. Number one and number two both have roughly 3x the employee count we have. What advice do you have for this situation? Have you seen companies that have come from a brand deficit come back? Sassy PM, I'll throw it to
Oh,
you. What do you think?
all right. Well, I will say, so first, one explanation for people who are reading, I know we have a lot of technical followers, is that GTM stands for go to market. It's sort of the standard SaaS term for the whole machinery of marketing, sales engineering, often post-sales, customer support, account management, things like that. Just everything that goes into take the product, turn the product into money. So I think my first take on this is that I would strongly question if this company's brand is actually eroding, that they actually have that strong a product. Because what you normally see in these markets is that you've got like a first place product and they're usually really kicking ass. They usually have actually really, really strong go to market because salespeople are not dumb, right? Like salespeople want to go somewhere where they can retire their quota, where they can make a bunch of money. So they go and they work. They're very sharp about finding what is the best product and then saying, I will go work at that product and I will take all of the dollars from the second and third and fourth and fifth place players. So that's normally what you see. And then often second place, you'll see like a more niche product, but that has really strong go-to-market that can be really, really effective at selling that product. Third place is like a really tough position to be in. Often requires, if you want to be successful, you've got to really drop prices to be competitive. And if you have a strong product and you're actually dropping prices, though, even with a weaker go-to-market, I would normally actually expect the brand of that company to be doing better. Like having more employees, I don't think that that really generally matters. And so I think the first thing to do in this situation is just to be like really real about how strong are you in terms of deciding what to do. What's your take?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, this whole idea that like a weak go to market means that word of mouth is working against you doesn't really make sense to me. Like, if you
hmm
have a weak go to market, what does that mean? That means that your marketing team is bad. Like, people aren't going to hold like the lack of good marketing against you, right? And when you have sort of like a world where it's like, oh, your sales team is bad, it's like yeah, you might get some flack on having like people that are too salesy, but in general, like when people talk shit about that, they're not gonna go and say your company's bad. They're gonna say your sales team are scumbags. And so if you're getting like a general bad word of mouth in market, it's probably not just your go-to-market team. And it's if your product is really, really strong, people would go and say it's a great product, but their X is sort of like not good. And that's different than our whole company is getting a bad word of mouth. So I agree with you. I would say like I would check that premise on like is your product actually that good and that strong? Because if you're getting a bad reputation, it's probably not as strong as you think as it might be. Now
Yeah,
that
like
said, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's something that we've talked about a bunch actually, that if you've got a really strong product, like an idiot can sell it. And you always have to assume that you need to have a really great product because one day, like an idiot will. That is just the nature of scaling up, is that you will hire such a large go-to-market organization that there are going to be people in there who just cannot sell that effectively. And as a result, sales problems almost always have some degree of either sort of obvious misexecution, like operationally people are just not doing what they were supposed to do, or you've set up all of your comp plans or your territories in some really, really weird way. Or much more likely is actually that the product is deficient or not does not have the level of product market fit that you actually think that it does.
100%. And that's not to say that a great sales team can't sell a bag of dog shit to anyone, because they can. But in general, the kind of world of sales is just like the world of product and engineering and design and R&D in general, which is that sometimes you'll have amazing people doing it. Sometimes you'll have really deficient people doing it. There's a whole spectrum. But if you end up going and saying, if a sales team is blaming their product, you're probably not that good of a sales team. And if a product team is blaming their sales team, they're probably not good of a product team. And it's generally just like the not the place that you should be focusing your energy. Now, all of that said, to the idea of does a third place, product ever come back? The answer to that is like absolutely. The world is filled with products that have ebbed and
Mhm.
flowed and sort of gone into third place and come back into first place and all of that kind of interactions. So to the direct question, can we come back from this? The answer is yes, absolutely. How will you come back from this is a very interesting question. The first step, and part of why we're saying check yourself on is your product that good, is you have to be honest about what you're good at and what you're not good at. Because the biggest thing that you see companies just flail and flail and flail and die is they can never even admit what the problem is. And that is the hardest way to actually try to solve a problem because you're not actually admitting what the problem is. Therefore, you will never solve it. So, can you come back from third place? Absolutely. The first thing to do is to be very clinical and very, very straightforward about what is the actual problems that you have. There's two
Yep.
pieces of that. The first piece is if you're sitting in the product team, you should be first and foremost thinking about product problems. It is a very common thing to go and say, "Oh, my product is good, but everybody else is doing a bad job." That may be true, but it's probably not. And also, you control the product. So if you're sitting in the product organization, you should be thinking about, or the engineering organization, you should be thinking about what can I do to make this company as great as it should be, and that should be 80% of your thinking. Now, when you kind of analyze what are the other problems that we have from go to market to product or whatever, I'll throw to you SaaSy PM. But my general take is like, if you're in third place, you probably don't have all the right people, and you probably don't have a strategy that is as sharp and as emphatic as it could be. And if you're sort of new in market, or it's sort of you're the smaller company, that's not a great place to be in because often those kinds of problems happen to like the second place incumbent and they're starting to fall behind. If you're the third place and you're a smaller team, that is a little bit worrisome to me because usually the smaller teams have to sort of eat what they kill. They have to be in a place where they're figuring out a way to actually wedge into the market. And if you're already in third place and you're smaller, you're either a company that hasn't really gotten any product market fit yet, or you're a company that is kind of just sort of been surpassed greatly. And we've seen a few companies like that in recent times where they just didn't invest enough, they didn't grow enough, and they totally fell behind. And we don't have that nuance in this question. But yes, SCPM, how do you come back from third place? And we don't know all the details, but what would you do?
Yeah, I agree with you. Third place, especially third place with these dynamics, is really rough. If the question was phrased as third place, but our product is absolutely the best, our customers love us, word of mouth is great, it's just like our CRO and our CMO, don't have their heads screwed on right, that's a much more tractable problem. I think the fact that they're not seeing really strong sort of momentum just off a much smaller base, that is concerning. And of course, it's solvable. But the way that I would solve it starts with, I think, having a plan, both like strategically, like literally, what do we build? What market do we go after? But also operationally, like how do we run this place that is much higher variance? Because you need to have a high enough variance, like a high risk, high return strategy that's actually going to get you over the hump to start to really make ground against second place, really make ground against first place, and hopefully make this whole market look scary enough that there is no fourth place competitor that comes from behind you. And so,
Yeah.
like, what are some examples of what you do here? One example is that you say, all right, we're going to go and just like bet on this new product line that we think has a lot of promise, and we're just going to throw everything at it. And we're going to make sure it's really successful. We're not going to do this as like, oh, Timmy, the CTO, and two of his favorite engineers, and 3 hours a week of one designer are going to experiment with a Skunkworks project. You do it like, we're going to like go and fucking commit, and we are going like it's like that movie Gattaca, right? Like you don't save anything for the swim back. Like we are going to just sail across the ocean, and there better be gold wherever we land. And I think that that is something like, for example, it's the obvious strategy. It's obviously though not very high likelihood in any one instance of necessarily succeeding. But in startups, most startups don't succeed. So you kind of just need to take that bet. And you actually see that right now with AI happening all the time. There are so many companies that have what I would call marginal product market fit, like enough product market fit that you have enough calories to survive the day, but not enough product market fit to IPO, not enough product market fit to convince Google to buy you for $10 billion. And tons of them are pivoting towards all in AI, whatever AI idea they can find, because there's at least enough variance there that maybe you can overcome the fact that you're in second, third, fourth place.
I,
The other thing, which actually goes along with your people comment, is that it is possible if you're in third place that you are there simply because there is some combination of people that is preventing you from taking a big swing high leverage strategy, and you just need to basically swap out. You just basically need to swap out your executive team. So actually, one of the companies that we advise, I'm not going to name their name, at least in this first one, is is a company which at a certain point just found that they didn't have the right people, and their CEO just swapped out like the majority of the executive team, and they're doing way better now. And sometimes you just have to make that kind of move.
totally, totally. Yeah, I think, coming back to sort of the themes here, it's first of all, like if you're saying go to market is a problem, you need to check yourself. You need to be honest about the problems that you have. You need to try to change things that you can control. And then to your point, think about making an actual bet. And I love that comment of like a high variance plan because one of the things that I agree with you with these marginal PMF companies is that it's sort of you get into this place where you're like a bad poker player and you're just kind of paying the ante and you're paying the blinds and your chips are getting smaller and you can get into this place where you've built a good enough company that there's a lot of people that have jobs and there's a lot of people that really like the company and people are not willing to take the risk to actually become a great company. And then you just get
It,
whittled away and whittled away and whittled away, and then you just get acquired, or you have to do, some kind of shop closing activity, and you go, "What happened?" And it's like you never actually took a risk. You built up something big enough that was too precious for you to risk failing on, and that I think is a really tragic scenario to be in. Sorry, you're gonna say
Yeah,
something?
it's a real issue on in two ways. So one is that it's your baby, and in that scenario that you laid out, definitely one of the common scenarios that you see is that eventually, essentially, the management team just gets replaced because they weren't willing to make the hard decisions that an outsider is willing to make. This is sort of like the genius of private equity is that they'll come in and they'll make the hard calls. The other thing that I think is much more pernicious that you really see in, I would say, like Silicon Valley tech and also increasingly in sort of other tech centers like New York City is that it just has become a really kind of hot thing to do to be the founder, to be an executive at a tech company that raises a bunch of venture dollars. Like you're sitting here, like we raised from XYZ, really fancy VC. Like, how could we ever need to pivot our strategy? Like we're funded by the best investors. You've told your mom and your dad, you've told like everyone that you've been on a hinge date with that you work at and you're a leader at this super hot company. And so it makes you really not want to pivot. It makes you not want to show any external sign of weakness. And I think that what we can see from a lot of companies that end up really successful, like I would point to Toast in the public markets is a good example of this. Airtable is famously kind of doing this right now, where they're doing a pivot over to AI. They just look at the situation on the ground. They just say, look, we're gonna play it as it lies, and we've got to do something really extreme, and we'll just do it. And if we look ridiculous and people like say mean stuff about us on X, like we don't care because we're trying to make money. We're trying to preserve jobs of our team here. We're not trying to like, look cool for some external person who probably honestly isn't even paying attention to them anyway.
Yeah, totally. We're not trying to ride this mid company into the sunset. Like one of the worst things that you can ever be in a startup is comfortable and just say like I want to maintain the status quo. You have to have people that are always just like I want more success, I want more impact, I want more money, and it's not enough what we're doing because that is the mentality that drives you to making actual bets. So I totally agree. The last thing I would say on this topic, from my point of view, is I think a lot of people think that these big changes always happen from like a CEO kind of having a moment of clarity and just saying, okay, I figured out like this is the next step and we're going to do it. I think when it comes to brass tacks, I think that's actually not how a lot of companies have a lot of these strategies implemented. I think it comes from often department heads or other people in the business saying, I have extraordinary conviction that this is the right thing to do. And maybe it's not every bet that the company is making right now, but it's a bet. And it's a really important bet. And as that bet becomes bigger and pays off in a more material way, maybe it becomes the whole company strategy or a really important part of it. But one thing that I also, when I talk to sort of heads of functions at different companies, you can sometimes hear them say, like, oh, I want my CEO to, like, do the Elon thing where you say, like, we're going to Mars. And it's like, yeah, maybe Elon does that. And that's why he's the richest guy in the world. And some CEOs will do that. But that's not how like every strategy at every company is formed. Sometimes it's the head of sales saying, "This is what we got to do. I'm putting you on my back, and we're going to ride this thing to success." And the CEO goes, "I agree with that. That's a great idea. Let's go do that." And so I think another thing I would just think about is if you're a head of function, like stop just waiting for your CEO to go and make up every single decision on big swings that your company needs to do to be successful. If you're at this company and you're in third place, give your CEO big ideas that you can actually go and execute on and believe that you can do it. But I see sometimes just sort of with very senior people, I see almost a fatalism of just like, I can't do it because my CEO didn't come up with an idea that is telling me what to do. It's like, that's not your job. If you're head of sales, if you're head of marketing, if you're head of product or engineering, your job is to come up with those big ideas and say, I got this. I have the plan and like I'm getting my CEO on board and I'm gonna run with it. And it's just something that I think if you're in this position, don't wait. It's your career. You can't wait and hope for somebody or the board to come along and save the day. You're the person that should be saving the day. So come up with the idea, pitch everybody to it, and run with it. And you might fail miserably, but it's again, it's better than that's another version of taking a risk. It's taking a risk on yourself. And you just don't want to be in a place where you say, I just spent 10 years watching this fade away because I was unwilling to take a bet or my company was unwilling to take a bet. I'm curious if you agree with that. We haven't really talked about that particular factor of where do you get these strategies from. But Sassy P, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that and maybe any closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and I think that it is in practice when you're sort of in the room where decisions get made, you start to realize that in practice, this is actually how a very large number of strategic decisions get made. I think that sometimes people feel like all courses of action are sort of defined by someone doing a very large quantitative like market analysis or going out there and like hiring, God forbid, hiring consultants to go and help lay out different strategic ideas. And then everything is a super big, well-reasoned decision. That's really not the case. That's actually like I find a minority of decisions, and often they're decisions that are like big and sprawling and complicated, like pricing, but where there's a lot of change management required. When we're talking about like bet the company or bet the large part of the company on some strategy, it's really often like a smallish group of people just have a good idea, and then a slightly bigger group of people are like, "Yep, that's cool. I can roll with that. You build it, I'll sell it. You sell it, I'll market it." And running with it. And I think that also the fact that it tends to be a very bottoms up small group that can really alter the course of a company would just go to my final takeaway, which is that there was a call on this question about number one and number two players in this market having 3x the employee count of the sort of question askers firm. And I would actually say that in these sorts of situations where you're trying to make a big swing, being smaller is an advantage. Like this is, and not only is it an advantage, this is actually kind of the only advantage that a startup has is the fact that you are smaller, you are nimbler, you don't need to get as many people on the same page to make a big swing, and you can actually throw all of your weight behind something and really be very very dedicated to following through on what is a better idea and what turns out to be a better idea than all of the incumbents in your market. And you have to really lean into that. Like, I think that looking at this, like, oh, they have 3x the employee count, that's why they're doing better. It's like, that's not the case at all. They have 3x, they're doing better. And as a result, they've hired 3x the employees. And you are very much in the driver's seat in a lot of these situations. We were talking about how it's not great to be in third place, but I don't know, it's a lot better than being in fourth place. Like you're pretty close. You have the leaders in sight. And I think that there's a lot that one can do from this situation as long as you're willing and able to focus, make decisive moves, and then actually follow through on them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And this starts with the hypothesis of you have weak go to market, and I would just come back to what are you doing about that? Are you like tweeting about it, or are you sort of commiserating, or are you like going to your CEO and saying like what the fuck is going on here, and what are we doing about this? And maybe they'll tell you you're dead wrong about that, but maybe they'll tell you you're right. And as a small company, you can do that. At a big company, you can never even talk to the CEO, no matter
Mhm.
who you are. It's like, there's 17 meetings to even talk about getting on the agenda to talk about versus if you're, a 500 person company, you can go and say, "Hey, can we go out to lunch and talk about what's going on here? I'm concerned." So I 100% agree. I think nimbleness is an advantage, and I would be more concerned if you were 3x the people and third place versus a third of the people and third place. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're running up on time here. Sassy audience, thank you guys for listening. This will be the first of many, hopefully. Submit more sassy questions and feel free to roast us on Twitter if you thought this was trash. Sassy PM, any final word?
Nope. Excited that we're doing this. Catch you next time.
Thanks all.